All right, y'all. So this is hilarious to me. So after Biden gave his State of the Union address, Trump randomly said some kind words about it out of nowhere. Everybody was shocked by that one. And now we have Nick Fuentes, white nationalist neo-Nazi, and those are not smears, those are accurate descriptors. I'm going by his own language, right? He debated Alex Jones on whether or not Hitler was based. He, of course, took the yes position. So here's Nick Fuentes coming out of nowhere, and he's like, you know what? Not bad. Joe Biden's actually not doing a terrible job. What? What? Now, pause there for a second, because if you love Hitler, but you also think Biden isn't doing a bad job, then are you saying Biden is kind of like Hitler? Like, what? I'm not exactly sure, right? But look at what he says. Biden's speech actually wasn't bad. Huh? Calling him a demented woke socialist falls flat when 60% of his speech sounds like Trump or better. Hold on. Face the facts. He's not that retarded. He's likable, and he isn't a trans shycom. That means GOP actually has to offer a compelling alternative instead of relying on this delusion that Biden is so unpopular. Okay, so let me pause here for a second. When he says 60% of his speech sounds like Trump or better, what I think he's referring to is all of the Made in America portion of Biden's speech. Biden kind of came out heavy on the economic stuff, which I think was a brilliant idea because, you know, most people only watch the first 10 minutes of the speech or at most like 45 minutes of the speech. And for most of that time, it was economics. It was we brought 800,000 manufacturing jobs back. We have 100,000 new jobs in renewable technology. We got a microchip factory coming here. We got, you know, electric car factories. We're bringing back American manufacturing. It was I signed a Buy America executive order. We're going to make this stuff in America. No more of this nonsense where we outsource it. And I think that's what Fuentes is saying when he says, hey, it sounded like Trump or better. Like, oh, he's actually leaning into the Made in America stuff. We're bringing jobs back here stuff. We're doing manufacturing again. We're going to have good factory jobs. So on that point, he's kind of right. You know, like he's right that Biden is leaning into that, and he's going to get good marks for that. Most Americans are going to look at that, and they're going to go, that's good. It's good that we're bringing jobs back here. Okay. So he continues. What's not to like? CHIPS Act, Buy America, Hire American, sensible position on China, protecting data from big tech, capping price of insulin. He's a Democrat, so there was the usual stuff about gun control, abortion, legalization of TPS and Dreamers, etc. But it wasn't so bad. The reality is that between the consolidation of allies around Ukraine and the Biden coup against Trump, Nicholas, the regime has actually put up a very effective counter to the Trump revolution. Goddamn. Now, obviously, the thing about the Biden coup against Trump, please. Come on. I mean, enough already. How many court cases do you need to realize that this thing was not stolen from Donald Trump? Didn't Biden win by like 7 million votes overall? Like, what are we talking about? He has over 300 electoral votes. These guys weren't even close to proving their, stolen election. So for him to fall for that is kind of beyond silly. But look at the list of the policy stuff. CHIPS Act, so that's to bring back microchip manufacturing. Now, that has been criticized for many people, including Bernie Sanders, as it could ultimately end up just being a corporate welfare check, and then the jobs aren't created. If that's the case, it's condemnable to the high heavens. But if it actually does bring back a whole bunch of jobs, that's a different story. And certainly right now, there are jobs coming back here. So far, so good. Buy American, Hire American. Now that there's loopholes in, right? It's not as straightforward as like they really went all in on Buy American, Hire American. Not really. It's more complicated than that. There's many ways around it. So I wouldn't give him too much credit on that front yet, but certainly the rhetoric is positive and it's going to gain him more support. He says sensible position on China, namely Biden kept in place a lot of the tariffs that Trump had put on China. I don't like the hawkishness vis-a-vis foreign policy when it comes to China, but I do like the standoffish position when it comes to trade because I don't think we should be so reliant on them. Protecting data from big tech, I don't know if he's doing that or how he's doing that or what he plans on doing. I'm always afraid that there's going to be more censorship from the top down when it comes to these American presidents, Democrat or Republican. Capping price of insulin, yeah, that is, again, that's only for seniors. And there are lower prescription drug prices, but only for some drugs and for seniors alone. So that could have been for everybody if it wasn't for Kyrsten Sinema, who took big checks from Big Pharma right before the vote. But it is some movement in the right direction where he was on the right side of it. So it's really interesting to see this from like, this is, okay, what we're looking at here is a far right perspective. We're looking at the perspective of a guy who's flat out like white nationalist. And even he's saying, come on, guys, it's hilarious to argue that Joe Biden is like a woke socialist. It just is, right? It just is. He ain't woke. He certainly ain't a socialist. And so what's left? Well, Fuentes is saying, let's go through the actual speech and let's look at the actual record. And when you look at that, Biden is outflanking Trump on a lot of the things Trump pretended to care the most about. I'm not going to outsource your jobs. Really? Under Trump, we had 200,000 jobs outsourced. Under Biden, there's been 350,000 jobs brought back to the country. We are onshoring jobs for the first time in my lifetime, not offshoring jobs. That's a tremendous fact. And by the way, that's one of the main reasons Democrats did well in this midterm election. They've been losing the Rust Belt more and more every election until suddenly, boom, this midterm flipped back. Why? Because they're bringing jobs back. So it's just really interesting to see this right-wing, far-right, white nationalist perspective on Joe Biden. And politics is so goddamn weird, man. You have some people who are like ardent lefties who hate Biden more than Nick Fuentes does, right? Now, again, it is kind of ironic though, right? Because if Nick Fuentes likes Hitler and he somewhat likes Biden, it's like, Joe, you might want to reevaluate some of the things you're doing. Like, I wonder if Nick Fuentes would acknowledge and admit that Biden actually is pretty right-wing on the border. He's pretty conservative on the issue of the border. Would Nick Fuentes admit that, or does he do the bogus line that a lot of Republicans use when they say, oh, he's like for open borders, or he's weak on the border? Because, again, he kept in place Title 42, remain in Mexico, expanded some Trump-era policies, filling in some gaps in the border wall. Like, he's being, I would argue, too conservative on the border. You know, if I was president, I would try to bring so many more judges down there to adjudicate this stuff. We'd have due process. We'd have a streamlined process and system to determine, you know, who's a refugee, who's not a refugee, who gets to stay in, who gets to leave. Like, we'd have a border. It would be protected, but there'd also be a humanitarian, altruistic approach to, you know, basically breaking everything down and determining who stays, who goes, so on and so forth. Biden is much more in agreement with Trump on the border than he is with me, right? Where it's like, you have a border, but we're humanitarian in our approach and we follow the law with our approach, right? In terms of, you know, asylum and refugees. So I wonder if Fuentes would admit that. This guy's not an open borders guy. This guy's actually too hawkish on the border, if anything. I don't know if he would. But it's funny. Like, I never would have expected this. Imagine if I told you at the beginning of the other day before the speech, if I told you at the end of today, Donald Trump is going to praise some of Biden's speech and Nick Fuentes is going to praise some of Biden's speech, you would have been like, what? No way. Just no way. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. So anyway, there's some weird, remember Richard Spencer, that other white nationalist guy? He went through a weird, like, he did a weird, like, half face turn, and was sort of randomly pro Biden for a little, and then I think he abandoned that. Look, this whole thing is me just saying politics is weird, dog. Politics, like, what is going on with all these people flipping their positions on this and that, or analyzing it in a way you would never expect them to analyze it? It's just super out of left field. It's just super out of left field. So anyway, there you go. Nick Fuentes saying Biden is actually a formidable opponent. Perhaps he even overstates it a little more than I would, to be honest. Ever since Adpocalypse, when YouTube defunded all independent news and politics overnight, we haven't trusted them. We know they can pull the rug out from underneath us at any time. If you enjoy this content, please consider tipping $1 or $2 per month on the Secular Talk Patreon. Link in the video description box below. Thanks for your support.